Welcome back to Wave Support. I see from your clinical request that you're still struggling with this patient from both a comfort and a vision standpoint. Well, let's take a look closely at your design and the topography and see if we can help you get back on track. If you look first at the topography, we'll notice, of course, that this patient has about 3 3/4 diopter of astigmatism, corneal cylinder. And if we look at the actual topography, we'll notice that we're missing some of the data up here, most likely from the lacrimal lake, back on the top, and as well as the bottom. So we're going to talk about how we might be able to address that as we go. If we look at your lens design itself, this is the most recent design, I believe. One of the things I noticed that when you pulled your data into Wave, you end up with a rather spherical representation of the cornea. If you remember, this bottom design, this bottom view is the Wave simulated topography. This, of course, is the back surface of the lens. And if we look right here, this is a rather spherical looking cornea. So I suspect that, once again, that Wave averaged the astigmatism in. One of the things I always try to remember is that if I'm opening up a new lens, if I need to address that issue, I try not to start with the previous lens. You have to go back to scratch and start with a new design on that particular lens, as a Wave doesn't let you choose that after the fact. So this one here, again, we're a little bit spherical. Now, if you are looking at trying to maintain a spherical design, keep in mind, since this is the flat meridian of the cornea and this is the steeper meridian, that lens is going to have a tendency to want to rock back and forth over that vertical meridian. That's probably contributing to your decentration upward. And of course, being a bifocal lens, that's going to potentially affect your outcome with the centration. If you do want to stay with this particular lens design, you might be getting some warping at this central thickness. You can increase that up a little bit. And then you might want to even look, I believe this patient was a prior gas perm wearer, so you might look back at what they previously wore and see, is it flatter than this or steeper than this? If you were flatter, if you're concerned about comfort, you could always switch this to tangential, which will give you about a half diopter more flattening in that lens design. I know, on a side note, I know most of the Wave designers tend to promote the axial design, and I am very comfortable with that. However, sometimes if I have a patient who's got considerable awareness with the lens, I'll switch over to tangential. If you recall, tangential tends to align the lenses more truly out here in the periphery, whereas axial tends to do a little bit better job here centrally. So that's just a little side note to keep in mind. But let's go back and look at these designs. So one of the things I want to look at is see if we can somehow get that lens to more closely match that cornea. I want to see if we can knock out most of that corneal cylinder on the back surface of that lens. So I want to go back here to the topography. And since we have a little erroneous data up here, I may want to use the editing tool to see if we can fix that. I'm going to go back here to photo processing. Bring that back into view so you can see it. And there's a lot of debate out there about using dots editing, but in this particular case, sometimes the dots editing tool can be helpful because that can help you clean up some of this area. Keep in mind, you're going to get, Wave is going to try to average this part of the cornea with this part and fill in the in-between. So sometimes we can help improve the accuracy of that area by using dots editing. So if you haven't used that, it's a neat little tool. If you go here to dots editing, and you can look at each little meridian here, as we go and move this up so you can see. And basically you go to ring 10, click on here to go the next ring out, and I just start walking my way out until I start losing data. And then as I start losing that data, I'll go up here and just kind of try to fill it in a little bit. And I'm just going to walk my way out. And you can see we've got some erroneous data here. So if I bring this back here, I'm going to just try to round it back out some more. And this sometimes takes a little while to kind of get this thing reasonable. You don't have to be perfect, but I just knock out some of the real erroneous stuff. And this is going to get a little more tricky here, I think. Let's see if we can kind of simulate that. It's not too bad. And we'll see if we can go one more. Okay, now we're getting a little ugly up here, but I'm going to see if I can get one more out of this here. Yeah, it's not too bad. And if I get over here 23, yeah, that's a little bit too far out. So if I go here after ring 22, now I hit delete external rings, and that's going to delete all this extra data out here. That's pretty much gone anyways, and that'll eliminate this lid that's getting in the way. And then I'm going to say, on that one. I'll sync a couple points. And now by extrapolating, now I'm going to take this data and run it up basically, in essence, under the lid. And I think that may give us a little bit better representation through there. And now when I hit Wave Design, give it a moment here for it to run the software. I'll pause the video while it's running that. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so this is, do you want to create a new contact lens? Yes. Do you want to start with the previous design? This time I'm going to say no, because I wanted to go back and start fresh off the topography. And here's where we want to watch out. Averaging the astigmatism data, I'm going to say no. So in other words, I don't want Wave to try to average everything out across the cornea. I'm just going to have it just try to do what it can with the actual design. I'll give it a moment to calculate here. Back again. So here we are, we're about to add the powers in. I'll switch this back over to axial. I'll switch this to GSIM. And I'm going to say current designs. And once again, I'll pause the recording while that's running the software. Okay, welcome back. The software just finished designing the initial lens here. And if we look now, we notice right away that this topography looks a lot different. If I bring up your original design, you'll see that we have a very spherical looking cornea. And this one we have something that represents a little bit more like the topography that we had up top. And if we look at this lens, the back surface of this lens very closely matches the corneal topography. And if we look at the back surface, we now have a lens that is a base curve that's quite a bit different in the two meridians. And if we look at the power difference between there, minus 487 and minus 165, that's about 3.2 diopters. So that's not too far off from here. So now you're assuming this lens is going to correct about 3/4 of the corneal cylinder. And then I think you're going to get a lens that's going to probably sit a little bit more nicely. If we look at the actual lens itself, you've got a lens that's aligning very nicely on the cornea. You may need to clean this up a little bit looking at the edge lift and considering between axial or tangential. But I think this particular design will give you a better chance of getting this lens to center well, hoping to get that bifocal right in the very center of the pupil. And I think that may also help improve some of your comfort issues, since part of those issues may have had to do with some of this erroneous state up in the upper and lower part. Once again, you might have to play a little bit with the edge lift and diameter, but I think this will give you a better shot of being successful. And once again, to kind of summarize that, I think you're still running into some issues with the topography representing or depicting a spherical cornea, and with all that cylinder, I think you're ending up with some weird over-refractions, some compounding cylinders, and maybe even some flexure. So I think if we take some of that out of the equation by getting that back surface more toric, that'll match the cornea, that'll help line this lens up. I think the lens will rock less and rotate less, and I think you'll get a much more successful outcome on that. Well, I hope you find that helpful. I wish you well. These are very challenging cases. Please don't get discouraged and hang in there, and I wish you luck. Have a great day.